It's up.
Ooh,
Got it up.
I'm going.
That's what happens when you're running Linux.
What happened? You ready?
That's what happens when you're running Linux. You know, you just get stuff done.
All right. It's too loud for me to even talk. I love it. Thank you. All right. You guys can grab more chairs from the side. There's a few over here and a lot over there. Grab whatever you need. There's a bunch of space on the side. Find a seat. Oh, you want that? Is that what I feed up to? Who knows if that's gonna work? I don't know. Crazy stupid. All right, hey, welcome. Hi. How many are you here for the first time? Awesome. Cool. Welcome. You people who are here for the first time won't care because you're here for the first time. But if you're not here for the first time, we're going to try a few things that are going to make my other organizers roll their eyes because they're weird. So sorry. We're going to try them. You'll see in a minute. We're a little bit better. It's not that bad. One was music, right? So that was cool. All right. So if you're like me and you woke up this morning, you may have already known that JavaScript, if you get the month for the current month we're in right now, it's going to tell you that we're in month number 1, right? What you might not have known, I didn't know, is if you do get year, that's what comes out. It's the number of years since 1900, so that's helpful. So let's just say awesome, right? Yeah, love it. Love JavaScript, so weird. All right, cool. We have an internet site. You can visit it. You probably want to put the M on the same line in the browser, but I like it like that, so we leave it like that. It might work. I don't know, .co. Give talks. We have quite a few in there. If you've submitted one and we haven't picked it yet, we are trying very hard to get you in. I will give you an insider tip because these talks we say can be between 1 and 20 minutes. So whatever you want to talk about. If you want to give a 1-minute talk, that's great. If you want to give a 20-minute talk, that's okay, I would say. Less great. It's cool, but it's less great. So if you want to get your talk picked fast, if you give us a 5-minute lightning talk, it'll be probably selected the next month or in the next few months. So we've got a lot of 20-minute talks stacked up. So if you want to get yours in there, cool, but it's going to take a little while, so we'll get to it. But we would love it, especially if you're a first-time speaker. You've never given a talk anywhere. That's awesome. You can come talk to any of us. If you just have an idea you want to run by us to see if we think it would work or whatever, that's cool. We'll help you kind of develop that. However you want to do it. A really good way to converse with us and stay in touch with us and ask us questions is to go to Slack. If you've ever heard me talk about this. So you can just go to that website and there's this form. It's actually a live stream of that form. There's only 8 people in there right now because we're all here. So who doesn't? Oh, actually, I don't want to ask that. But if you don't know what Slack is, that's crazy. But it's a chat thing. Okay. Yeah, it's a chat thing. It's kind of, yeah, okay. And so we have one. It's free. You can join there. It'll send you an email invite, and a couple of us hang out. It's actually not that noisy at the moment. It might become more so if more of us join. But I'm going to give you a couple more reasons to do it as I talk for the rest of this intro. So highly recommend doing this. I'm going to tweet out a link to it a little later. So if you follow us, we're just charmCityJS on Twitter. You can look for that, or you can just try to memorize that, but I know no one has memory anymore, so I'll tweet it. Yeah, if you're already in there, great. That's awesome. If you're not and you sign up now, sometime tomorrow or the next few days, I'm going to draw maybe like 5 names of people who are signed up for our Slack, and they'll get a 1-year subscription to Front End Masters. One of our co-organizers, Amy Knight, has a friend who hooked us up with a bunch of these, so it's a great video courses, actually some really, really high quality ones. There's this cool new framework they talk about called React that is like sweet. It's coming up. It's coming up big. And so they have some pretty cool courses there. So we'll get a 1-year free subscription to that. We'll probably draw about 5 names. So if you're in Slack already, you're already entered. But if not, you should join. Cool. Announcements from me. So we got Rails Workshop for Women. We're good friends with the Rails community here in Baltimore. They're awesome. So if you want to learn Rails, check this out. bemoreonrails.org/school. I think we tweeted about this earlier today, so you can look that up too. Node School. We had one in December, I think. We're gonna have another one on a day. That's how much we know right now. Stay tuned. It's gonna be on a day though. Okay, so if you have announcements, that's cool, and pretty much anything goes. We've said no recruiters in the past. I just want to explain that really quickly. It's not, we don't hate recruiters. We just don't want them here. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of kidding. No, they can come every month and get to know us, and it'll be great, and they can talk or whatever, but we don't want to make this a place where we encourage recruiters to come in for an event, talk about some jobs and leave. Like, that's bullshit. We don't want that. So if you have a recruiter at your company that wants to come to the events, they're welcome here. That's great. Like, we're just not going to do like recruiter announcements, right? Like, if you're working at a job and you have a job opening, tell us about it. That's awesome. But we kind of say, let's maybe not do the recruiter thing so that we don't become that kind of meetup. So we're just kind of trying to protect all of you from that kind of situation. So that being said, I will demonstrate this. We are looking for a website engineer at SparkPost, or a website developer, more like doing HTML, CSS, and some front-end JavaScript, working with our marketing sites and things like that. So if you are interested in that, it's more of a kind of intro to mid, not really intro, but mid-level in that world. So if you know anyone, please let us know. And that's one announcement from the crowd. Okay, anyone else? Paris.
I'm Paris. I am looking for a co-organizer of charmCity Linux. That's a group of mine. I have a ton of things that I want to do that unfortunately I can't execute by myself. Lots of big ideas for the first. We have about 400 members. We host here typically. We had a group last night. So if you know or if you are interested in that kind of a organization, reach out to me.
Cool. Yep.
I'm going to do a stand-up.
Whatever you think was going to project your message the best.
I'm Shine. I'm working on our website. We're looking for engineers, kind of DevOps, full stack, kind of like varying levels. Right? Yeah, all the things. So working on some cool stuff. That's all I got.
Cool. Yep.
I've got an interactive agency here in Baltimore called Chalk and Chisel. We are looking for a Node.js developer, primarily backend. If you're full stack, great. If not, that's a big deal. I can tweet out the like job posting.
Yes. So in our Slack room channel, we have a channel called Jobs that you could post it. If
Well, I'll do it. There you go.
You should.
And post.
Just saying, if you want to join the Slack. I don't know if I mentioned the Slack channel yet, but it's there.
You guys have a Slack?
Yeah, we do. I'll put a link up. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be about jobs. It could be about conferences or events or jobs.
So we're a small startup called Silica. We're working on improving therapy for cancer, and we need people to try and work. Basically, we're trying to connect clinicians together. And so React experience is great, but really an intro level or mid-level person would be fantastic.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'll finish up just two other quick ones. There may be some interesting, I'm going to be vague because I don't really know the details, but mentorship type opportunities coming out of some partnerships we have with Betamore and Digital Harbor. We're looking to kind of maybe just do some grassroots stuff with people who are already embedded in those places. They reached out to me, and so I told them I would make a vague announcement tonight and say that if you want to be involved in that, a good place to go might be. It would be the Slack channel. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. Sorry if you hate Slack, because that sucks. There's an IRC connector. You can connect right in. Oh yeah, Paris. I don't know.
So, we're also launching the Baltimore Technology site soon. So you'll hear bigger stuff, bigger announcements from that, and that keeps me in, because of course we're going to be looking for mentors as well. Yes, that can be mentors for women, sponsors as well. Know what a sponsor is. Please familiarize yourself with what a sponsor is. And then what else? Baltimore Hackathon. That's also going to be on a day, sometime this fall. We are in venue mode right now, so maybe news of a very large venue that will let us go for 3 days. Please contact me as well.
Cool. All right, we'll move on. If you want to help with Node School too, let me know. Like charmCityJS or Node School, anytime. Jump in, say you want to help, because we need help with that stuff too. All right. Sponsors, yay. They make it possible, right? Advertising.com gives us this awesome place that we are sitting in. So thank you. Thank you. SparkPost gives us money. Thank you. Money. Thanks for the money. And Tenon pays for our meetup page. They're, oh, hold on. Let me just say real quick. SparkPost, we send email, big time email. So if you do like application stuff that sends emails, kind of like SendGrid, then you can talk to me about that more. And do you want to say anything about AOLadvertising.com? Cool, totally cool. They're the awesomest. Tenon is an accessibility tool. So if you do front end stuff, they are a really cool company. One of our co-organizers, Carl, who has, I'm going to give him hell for never having made a single event this whole year. So, but his company's giving us money, so that's cool too. All right, check them out if you like accessibility. Tonight, we got Andrew Bernstein doing an introduction and exploration of the web audio API. Pretty psyched about this. So that's cool. I'm psyched about all things, of course. But this is good. The Eric Sauer, as his Twitter handle makes clear, is going to talk to us about a React Native perspective. A talk he's going to be giving at ReactConf soon, this month, I think, right? Yeah, cool. And lastly, we've got Chris Stone. I renamed this talk for him because I just wanted to. It's called I Bought a Traffic Light. It's about, what the hell, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. It's a really big traffic light that's on the floor over here. He's going to show us about it. All right. So afterwards, we're going to go to Hux, like we've been going to for a while now. I don't know if it's showed up on Google Maps yet. I hope so, because a while ago it wasn't. If not, just follow the crowd. It's not very far away. It's right there. And yeah, I heard the kitchen open. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad for the crowd. I'm sure it's been pretty empty for us. So, but that's where we're going. So right after this, we'll go there. So Andrew, if you want to come up here, we're going to get started. But the last thing we're going to do differently. Oh, hey, cool. No, we're fine. Wait, where is he? Andrew? Hey, come on up. Yeah. Okay. So last thing we did differently is I don't like the fluorescent lights, so we're gonna try something that's gonna be super cool. And we're gonna do that differently. So if that doesn't work, let us know in the Slack channel. Don't talk to me afterwards. I don't want to hear it. I think that's it. We're gonna do Q&A over here after this talk, so give some time for people to switch over. So yeah, Web Audio API. Give it up.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you to charmCityJS for having me, and for you all for listening to me talk. Talking about the Web Audio API, and my name is Andrew Bernstein. I am a musician and an artist. I play the saxophone and some other instruments, and I make electronic music. I play in this band called Horse Lords, play saxophone and percussion, and make electronic music. And I've been making computer music for a while. In the last couple of years, I got into the Web Audio API, which is basically computer music written in JavaScript. And this is a fun graphic I found of the evolution of audio in the browser. So the Web Audio API is sort of more than just like an audio tag playing back an audio file. You can do synthesis, and you can play back audio files and manipulate them and sort of process them in different ways. And that's sort of the power of it, that you can do all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to show you a couple of the things that you can do, sort of a couple of Hello World examples in this presentation. So it all starts with context, and this is sort of like in the sense of like the HTML5 drawing context when you're drawing animations to the canvas, but this is the audio context. And that's where all of the audio processing happens. So the first thing you do is create an audio context, how you will start all of your future web audio experiments. And then I'm going to create an oscillator, which is a sound generator that oscillates, like it says, if you're not familiar with sort of the building blocks of electronic sound. Create an oscillator, and then I will set its type to sine so that it's a sine wave oscillator, and then set its frequency to 440, which for musicians, music types in the room, 440 is the musical note A. And then you connect it to the output, connect it to the speakers, the audio context destination. And this is sort of like plugging in a sound source to the speakers. You see, like your CD player to your headphones or anything like that, which most of us have probably done at some point. And then you press play by calling start on the oscillator. And this is all you need to make a sound, to make like the simplest sound. And I'll click that, and that's what that does. It doesn't look like much. There's no interaction or anything, no graphics. That's just a sine wave oscillator playing 440 cycles per second, or hertz. So that's really simple. And so this is sort of the web audio graph that this isn't the one that we just made, but this is an example of a web audio graph. We add a source, an oscillator, and then we just went directly to the destination. But you can create all of these sort of effects. If anybody's familiar with sort of guitar effects pedals, you have the guitar, which is the sound source, and then it goes out of the guitar into, say, like a distortion pedal, and then you have a wah-wah pedal, and then it goes into the amplifier, and the amplifier is connected to a speaker. So, and that's sort of what's all going in here, going on here, and then some. You know, there's a panner, so you can pan in the stereo field. So the next thing is so a gain node. I talked about an amplifier, and that's essentially what this is. So if we just had an oscillator that was static and we couldn't change its volume. So if we wanted to change its volume, we would have to add a gain. With our same audio context, we call create gain, and I'm calling it gain. And then say set the gain to the X position of the mouse. That's the sort of, and it's a value between 0 and 1, 0 being complete silence and 1 being sort of no change in volume from the actual sound source. And then connect the oscillator to the gain with that same connect function, and then connect the gain to the output destination. And so this is plugging things in. You can add things in between two things. And then that is something like this. So I can control the volume of my oscillator, and that's kind of cool. It's not that cool, but it's something. we're getting somewhere. We're approaching coolness. So with all that we have learned thus far, we can create a sort of a primitive electronic instrument, not really so primitive, but one of the sort of earliest electronic instruments, the theremin, which is sort of like the first electric instrument, early 20th century, created by Leon Theremin and this Clara Rockmore, who played sort of like the classics of the classical era on the theremin, like playing Brahms on the theremin, which was kind of cool. So she controls the pitch of the instrument with the distance of her hand from this metal rod is sort of entering the sort of like a magnetic electric field, and then the volume by her hand distance from this rod over here. So the only thing I'm going to change from the last example is setting the frequency of the oscillator to the Y position of the mouse. And that's what that sounds like. So, yeah, thank you. So then you could play a little melody here if you wanted, but it's kind of hard to work with. So this is pretty simple, and we can make it a little more complex by adding effects into the mix, sort of adding more things into that chain. Right now we just have an oscillator going to the gain and going to the output, and if we added a sort of an echo in there, that would be a little bit cooler. That's kind of cool. We can start getting into like making some music in the web browser. And what's next? So dealing with pitch. So far we've just been dealing with sort of continuous pitch in frequency, and sort of in most music, you know, on the piano you have discrete pitches. You know, you press a button and it's that pitch. You press another button or key and it's that pitch. And there's different ways to do that in web audio that are not necessarily built in, but there have been sort of like libraries built around like wrappers for web audio, and a great one is tone.js that sort of bundles all this stuff together into some more complex sounds than just a simple sine wave oscillator, and it's geared towards musicians, so you can work with note names like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and sort of work with more musical parameters. I've developed a sort of wrapper to deal with tuning called tune.js that sort of allows you to work with a big library of microtonal scales, because that's something I'm into. And so there's different ways you can work with pitch and sort of define your own scales to be able to like make something more interesting. So I've demonstrated like a couple of possibilities for getting started, just making a sound, any sound in the web audio API, but you could make subtle like user interface components. I made this simple one. So that's kind of cute. You know, like I know on like Facebook and Gmail, when you get like messages, makes a little sound. That's probably, you know, that's web audio. Or like, and not many people probably have user interface buttons that you click on, but it's coming. Sort of data sonification. I made a quick and dirty sort of data sonification here, mapping the last 100 arrests in Baltimore City based on age, the pitch based on the age of the arrestee, and then a filter based on the race of the arrestee, which is in the data. So this is just a demonstration. You can make a data sonification if that's what you're into. I'm sort of, my interest in it is sort of making sort of generative algorithmic art, which is sort of why I got into working with this kind of stuff. I don't want to leave this on too long in case there's any epileptics in the audience. Probably should have given a warning first. But so there's more possibilities, say for like browser-based game audio. A lot of people and a lot of the documentation that's out there is sort of dealing with game audio, and you can, you know, sort of have any kind of events trigger audio. You know, we saw with an on-click event with the user interface. Spatialization and VR experiences. I mentioned the panner node, and you can do a lot of stuff with sort of, I mean, on like laptop speakers, you won't notice much, but you know, in headphones, you can do very, like, you know, you can make a sound spin around your head, or, you know, and this would be good for game audio too, you know, for that kind of thing, if something's coming from that side or whatever. Sound visualization, there's a sort of a built-in FFT analyzer with the web audio, so you can do that, visualize sound or use that. And there's also some cool APIs out there, including SoundCloud, which is a service where people can upload their own audio and people share their tracks and remixes and stuff. And they have a really awesome API that you can tap into and pull their audio and get, you know, manipulate it just as a sound source. And you can also sort of do your own synthesis in web audio. In their sort of, there's a script processor node that you can just write samples directly to like a buffer, if that means anything to you. So that's all. Thank you. That's all. Yeah. Sure. Does anybody have any questions?
Eric, you want to come up?
Yes.
So what is the browser support situation like, particularly on mobile?
It's pretty good. Like I mean, things are best. I mean, it's all still. It's not. You definitely have to make sure that things run cross browser. But on Chrome and Firefox, everything is supported pretty well. And on mobile Chrome and Safari, my patches are like my programs have run pretty well. And I tested things on Internet Explorer. I don't know if there's mobile Internet Explorer. I don't know about that. Weird Windows phone. But yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't say that it's great. Yeah. Yes.
It seems like whatever sounds you can make with putting the nodes together, you can make in a conventional sort of synthesizing tool. But the JavaScript gives you the interaction, sort of using the browser to interact, and distribution, perhaps you can say. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I would say that.
And then secondly, is it what's performance like? Do you ever think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna slow down my browser from working, doing these things?
Sure. I mean, those are concerns. It's especially like, my interest in it is for like interaction and distribution, like, and the kinds of things, and also like bringing in like data to bear, like, and even though you can do that with other computer music languages too, but I feel like it's more sort of like native to JavaScript, working with data APIs and stuff like that. But yeah, like if all you're interested in is like having like rock solid like performance that nobody's going to be like seeing it, then you might be better off using a different platform. But yeah, because there's a lot of great ones out there.
But do you find like you have to worry about the browser, using too much CPU? Like, how crazy do you have to be before that starts happening? Generally, casual usage.
Sure. I mean, it happens. I guess like that's like you on one level you have to just like be comfortable with the fact that people like you're not going to be able to control the context that people receive your work in. So because it's the browser and everybody's browser and computer and they're sitting in their living room, they're not in a concert space. So you don't have control over the context in that way. But so yeah, like I'd say you have to you probably don't have to like, if you're like resizing the window like crazy and there's a whole bunch of like layout elements, you might run into some like lag in things, especially with like timing. Like you want to make a drum machine, and there's a whole bunch of like blog posts talking about like rock solid timing in the web audio API. But it's possible and it's getting better. But yeah, it's not as like you do have to worry about that. But I think it does actually run in like a separate thread than like the layout. So in that way. You don't quite have to worry about quite as much as that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? I can't really see.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Cool. 5 minutes again. Maybe a little more than that. My name is Eric Sauter. For those of you who I don't know, title of my talk is React Native Retrospective. For those of you who were here when I talked in September, you're probably asking yourself, like, is this dude really back here talking about the same thing again? The answer would be yes. But no, I'm not just like submitting talks every like day on the website, like hoping they pick me again. The couple of the organizers were nice enough to ask if I wanted to give kind of a test run here because I'm giving this as a lightning talk at ReactConf in a few weeks. So with that being said, it's kind of a little rough around the edges still. I might go over 5 minutes. It kind of assumes prior experience with React Native, so I apologize for that. But if you don't necessarily like kind of get everything, I'd certainly appreciate any input you have just on like how the talk goes, like the speed. I currently have 65 slides. It's kind of a fast-paced talk, so I'll probably need to take some out. Yeah, actually 67. So. I'm going to start my stopwatch just so I have an idea, and I might go over. I'm not just going to stop if I don't finish. But anyway, the reason I'm here today is because I think React Native is awesome. For those of you who don't know anything about it, it's essentially a way to use JavaScript and React to build native iOS and Android apps. So React Native is awesome, but what if I told you, sorry, and again, the animations, I don't really want them, but I have to get those out of there. So that'll take up some of my time. What if I told you that React Native sucks? If you really like React Native and if you really like React, you'd probably react like this. But when I say React Native sucks, what I really mean is that it sucks a small % of the time. So there's a really scientific chart I made little pie graph. So that being said, what I want to talk a little bit about is some of the pain points with React Native, kind of touching a bit on the good parts as I do that, talking about how things have and will continue to improve, and kind of some of my suggestions sprinkled throughout. So let's talk about components. Anyone who uses React, components is kind of like the core of React. So with React Native, there's a ton of great components and APIs right out of the box that let you use things like maps, camera, text, things like that. But with most apps, you'll find yourself likely needing more. The good news is that the ecosystem has come a long way. It's growing daily. If you look for React Native on NPM, there's thousands of results. But unfortunately, it's not always growing fast enough. So jumping into tools and technologies, when you start with React Native, it kind of starts like this, JavaScript and React. But as you go farther and as you get more serious with your app, it kind of turns into this. And probably even more things I left out of that. So, sometimes you kind of get a little sad about that. It can be tough. You run into a lot of little problems. With that being said, there's a really nice CLI and packager built in. So CLI, you start React Native init hello world, boom, your project's all set up. With the packager, you have built-in JS compilation with Babel, bundling, asset loading. It kind of handles that all pretty nicely. It's still new and there's some bugs, but it does a good job there. It limits some of the fatigue that if you follow the JavaScript community closely, there's been a lot of talk about lately. So that's definitely a good thing, but it's certainly not perfect yet. And I really think as really with any programming library and whatnot, what we really need to strive to do is kind of move towards that JavaScript and React and kind of eliminate all the extra things that come in. I think that's like an ideal world with React Native. So obviously React Native, it's iOS development. It's one part of the spectrum. So with React Native, you have to deal with kind of what I'm calling the Apple stuff. So part of that is Xcode. Generally, when people think of Xcode, they think of problems and errors and things like that. There's times when you have to learn Objective-C and Swift because certain things you want to do aren't yet implemented in React Native. What I've actually found, I think a lot of times people confuse like problems with the iOS SDK and Xcode. They kind of blame it on Objective-C. But really what I found is just like learning the iOS SDK and learning Xcode and things like that kind of helps with that. You also have to deal with the App Store. Submitting to the App Store is still very tedious. It still is very slow. You have to wait a while until your app gets approved. And it's actually a Hail Mary, so I'm routinely finding apps getting rejected for features that have been in there since the very first release, like 8 months ago. So that's not fun. But luckily, there's some great tools to ease your pain if you're dealing with the App Store. For any just iOS developers, Fastlane is an awesome tool to deploy apps really simply from the command line. The other 3 tools I have listed are React Native specific, and they're just aimed at doing really easy deployment and updates. Some are actually instant updates, so you can bypass App Store approval process, and that's all legit. And there's apps doing that now. I can talk more about that later if people want to know about that. So the community, React Native's growth has been pretty explosive. It's definitely one of the highest started repos on GitHub, and it's only been around a year. But it's been explosive in good and bad ways, right? That's the current status of the GitHub repo. This is maintained by a small core team, right? These effects are a lot nicer once I get my animations not in there. The core team is small. There's, I don't know, under 30 people, I think. The core team is very busy. I mean, these people are busy working on this huge library, but they also have other jobs and other parts of their life. And they have big responsibilities. They can't just take any pull request from Joe Schmo and merge it in, right? Like they have to maintain this framework and library and always be looking to the future. So because of that, issues and PRs can stay open for a while. This is an active PR that I'm waiting to be merged so I can do a certain thing that I want to in my app. It's been open since September. It's getting close, but still not quite there. And again, I'm already over 5 minutes, so I got a long way to go. So I'm going to be cutting a lot of slides out. But they can also go stale if the issue creators don't keep up. I had an issue I filed, and I realized like 2 weeks down the road it didn't exist anymore. It wasn't a problem that existed. And so if a maintainer had come in and see that, they would have wasted time just diagnosing that. So some issues and PRs are unavoidable, but many are unnecessary. Growing the core team has certainly helped that, but only to an extent. Really the point I want to make there is that just because something doesn't work, and this applies to anything, it doesn't mean it's broken. So really just want to emphasize, like, seek out other resources before you open issues in open source projects. Stack Overflow, existing issues for React Native and React, there's React to Flux on GitHub, or Discord. And there's a newer site called Product Panes that React Native is using just to identify like features and things that people care about within the community. Try not to complain about a bug if you don't have a solution. Lastly, docs. React Native changes very quickly, and so do its docs. There's a lot of features that you want, but changing docs can mean unimplemented or undocumented changes. There's actually been docs for features that weren't even implemented, which can be a big pain. These are certainly getting better every day. I think there's an easy solution for this, which would just be version docs. Ember does this. A bunch of other people throughout history do this. Android, I'm not going to gloss over too much, but basically Android was released about 6 to 7 months after the iOS version of React Native. And so you basically deal with all the problems I just described, but kind of set back 8 months. So it's kind of repeating the process over. This is actually a lie because my talk should have ended about a minute and a half ago. But some takeaways. So this is like the important part, and this is what I'm really going to be working to kind of make obvious throughout my talk. React Native is like a monumental change in the way we build mobile apps. And so, of course, there's going to be some headaches. Like, it's a new thing, as with any new thing. It's gotten better daily, and it will continue to get better with time. And to get even better, like, we need people contributing. That's, again, the same with any kind of open source project. Like, contribution is what's going to make this great. I say don't complain, but what I really mean is don't complain unless you're going to help make things better. If you follow the kind of the JavaScript fatigue discussions, Ryan Florence tweeted last month that basically if you don't want to be on the bleeding edge, then step back. But if you do want to be on the bleeding edge, then get some super glue and some gauze and help out, basically. And I think it was a very powerful tweet for me that really, made an impact on me. I think I don't know, just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so clearly that talk was too long. But if you have any other comments related to that, or even questions about React Native, I'm willing to take those as well. Yeah.
Will anyone that you're going to talk to have a React background?
Most people should. So yeah, that's kind of something I'm like teetering on, because it's essentially there's a lottery to get a ticket to ReactConf, and there's like 300 tickets, and so it's like pretty competitive. I think a lot of people have experience, but there'll definitely be people that don't. So that's still kind of something I'm kind of teetering with, especially React Native. People have React experience, but they won't necessarily have React Native experience. So yeah, that's one of my issues. So
It feels like the themes of looking at documentation and resources and how you can contribute are really strong in the talk, and like slowing down and focusing on those.
yeah, I think I should. I think that's what I've kind of been thinking, because those are really the things I want to drive home. But I don't necessarily. I kind of implicitly touch on a lot of them throughout. So I appreciate that comment.
And have you gotten a chance to dive into the React Native source and contribute yourself?
Mm-hmm. Not as much as I should have, but
That's
I've
fine.
opened some things.
We use React Native. We've been using it for like a year. It's like
I know Adam, so when I heard you say
it's fantastic. But if you have experiences with contributions that you've had, like, hey, this felt good, getting the community to understand that, like, I thought I was up against this big thing. It turns out that diving into the code, spending a couple hours, I was able to contribute, not only fix your own problem, but contribute back to the community, and just how good that feels, that personal experience. Maybe a nice addition.
Yeah, I agree. Cool, thanks. Anything else? Sorry, I can't really see. Back.
I think when we talked before, you mentioned you were using Redux, and I know even outside of React Native, just React itself is having a lot of changeover and consolidation around the Flux libraries and stuff like that. I was just wondering what your experiences were, if it was Redux that you were using, how that partners with the routing and data and the navigation.
Yeah, so we are using Redux, I'm sorry. There you kind of, any Redux is kind of agnostic of, browser or whatever. You can do it on React Native. With that being said, like we started without Redux. So, as we're like building other JavaScript apps and we're kind of like starting to move over to Redux or whatever, we kind of start thinking of those same things with the app. And that's actually a challenge kind of because, it's a part of this process, like trying to figure out how you can, architect your app better. As far as like navigating, there's some navigation components within React Native. They're actually working on better ways, kind of more in like the routing style, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of a pain because the navigation that exists doesn't play well with Redux. So you kind of jump through a lot of hoops to get that to work properly. So.
A good shirt, you should wear it during your talk.
No, thanks. I think I actually might have worn this my last time. I need to start showering or something.
So, for routing in React Native, do you just use React Router too, or?
No, so we actually use, there's a navigator component, and then we kind of do some custom stuff with like Redux. The state for that, so with Redux, you have all your state at the global level, not global, but like in a single place. And Navigator kind of has localized state, and it's a component, it's a part of the library. So you can't, it's hard to really like pull that state out. And so it kind of creates some like weird things happening there. Essentially like sometimes passing callbacks to like go to the next screen or things like that, like weird things. So yeah, it's not the nicest solution right now, but the person who actually wrote that component on the core team is like actively working on a better solution to that. So.
I know you touched a little bit about JS fatigue. I think most people heard about Arts and how Facebook is kind of supporting that this year. Are you concerned that, I guess, as anybody learning React, I'm not too sure how big Facebook is on the core team, but in, I guess 3 years, does React still be supported or no?
I mean, Facebook's actively investing in React and React Native. They have parts of their main website that are built in React. They have apps out in the App Store that are built in React Native. And I think actually parts of their mobile app, maybe, there might be some small parts in React Native. So they're definitely making a big commitment to it. As far as like the fatigue talk, I think that's one of the things React Native does well because it's like official. They kind of have official support built in, whereas like if you're writing React and just JavaScript, you kind of figure out like what tools am I going to use. It's very easy to just start up a React project, but when you start getting more serious and start building out that project, that's where sometimes, and then you have all these tools and you go to try to start another project and you're used to all these tools and you're like, I don't even remember what I did to start that last project. So I don't know, maybe that's, I don't know if Facebook's thought about that, but something like that would work well with something like React where it just kind of like spins a project together really quickly, and it's the simple things that you need to be efficient, I guess. Yeah.
So did you guys consider Tabbas.js at all, React versus React Native?
I'm not familiar. I may have heard of it, but basically we had web apps built in React, and it was two of us at the time developing, and so we knew we needed a mobile app, and we didn't have Objective-C experience really. And so it's kind of a way where it was an easy way for us, and because we were familiar with React, to just like jump in and be productive from day one. So that was what went through our decision-making process, I guess. And also the fact that it's actually like fully native. It's not like a web wrapper or anything like that. So.
Have you like reused any components that you used in like a web app in React Native?
No, I think there's some people who are kind of exploring that, but the components are a little different. Like in React, you have like traditional like at the base level like a div. The React Native equivalent is a view, and then like with a paragraph or a span, it's a text component. So they're not quite like plug and play, but it's definitely possible. And people are experimenting with React and like any kind of like front end kind of display system you can think of, like WebGL and things like that. So it's definitely extendable. It's just a matter of really like doing that. So.
Yeah. So one example on GitHub that was like the component structure was basically like there were separate renders for each different type. So there was like one that it was named like .ios.js, and then there was one that was like .android.js, and then one that was like .js.
Yeah,
and
so
then
that's
like a base class that they were like extending in each one.
that's how React Native works right now with Android and iOS. It'll just load the different files. So that's definitely a way you could do something like that. So.
Thanks, Eric. We're gonna take like a 3-minute break. So if you want to drink, there are drinks in the like vending machine down the hall that you are welcome to. It's like not a vending machine; it's like a fridge, like a glass fridge. And the restrooms are there too. And we'll be back here in like 3 minutes. Chris will have a big traffic. So. Yeah, we're good to go. You like turn it so we won't see the lights, or you just leave it like that?
It's winding if you look right at it. And it's going to have, yeah, and it's going to be dark. So
Cool.
I've been through this, and you see spots. So. All right. So my name is Chris Stone, and the original talk was not called "I Bought a Traffic Light." It had some like I said, I'm pretty sure I said Node.js in the title and WebSockets or something like that. But this one works too. So that's pretty much the gist of everything. Is I ended up buying a traffic light. And you can see this here, and you can see me like lugging it through the halls on the way out. A lot of people ask me why I bought a traffic light. So I guess I've always wanted one since I was little, and then now that I'm an adult and I can buy things, what the hell, why not? It actually came up as a work thing where like we do a lot of system monitoring and stuff like that, and we wanted to get some visual representation of the state of things. 3 lights don't really do that in case you ever decide to go this route, but I got tired of looking at a screen all the time. So if I was walking down the hall, I wanted to be able to quickly look at something and see if shit's on fire or everything's good. It was something new. The traffic light is a really good conversation starter too. So when people drop by the office and they saw it sitting in the corner, they always ask, why do you have a traffic light? So they are actually extremely easy to come by without ripping them off of intersections and things like that. So you can buy them for fairly cheap. So I actually got mine off of eBay through a quick eBay search. I wasn't sure if it was actually going to show up or not, but it did, and it showed up in like the worst shipping box ever. But this traffic light comes from the state of Missouri, and there's a little story behind that. They sold all the traffic lights in this small town that they have, and I can't remember the name because they passed an ordinance where the backs of the traffic light had to be yellow. And they just bought all these. So instead of painting them yellow, they tore them down and bought new ones. And they sold it to a local guy that just sold them on eBay. So I got that for about $120. And then like $20 shipping. So it's not that bad. It's affordable. So this slide is going to explain why I have it turned this way. If anybody has ever watched Seinfeld and seen the episode where they put a Kenny Rogers Roasters across from Kramer's apartment, when the light is red, this is what you feel like. Everything is red. And then while we were trying to set this up and do alerting stuff, you tend to type faster and you're pissed off more because the whole room's red. It's in your face. You look at it, you see spots. So this should do us nicely. I'm also trying to win the Slides of the Year award. So you can tell I put a lot of time into them. White, a couple pictures, and I think there's only like 4 left. But I want to show you some of the code behind it and some of the stuff that I was doing. So I am not a Node guy. I'm barely a JavaScript guy. My first instinct is, hey, let's cram this in PHP. I'm going to admit that, and I'm sure, like, if you're a PHP person, I'm pretty sure Jason. I met Jason through PHP. Carl won't even raise his hand, and he writes it every day. So my first thought was, hey, we're going to cram this into PHP and do something cool with it. After I kind of got that out of my mind, I decided to try something new. You know, I'm wiring up hardware. Let's go with a different language that I haven't really played with too much, or a different approach. So everybody's familiar with what Raspberry Pis are? Anybody play with them currently? All right, cool, couple hands. So I bought a bunch of Raspberry Pis. I'm a Linux guy too. We use them for random things. Like we do this stuff for customers sometimes, and it's nice for like quick monitoring, or we use them to power display boards. You know, it's a cheap $35 computer. The cool thing about them is you can see those pins on the top left. We can actually control those pins, and we can control boards that are connected to it, and we can do some cool stuff with it. So they have different boards for probably damn near everything now. The bottom board is a relay module, and that controls electric. So you have power that goes in, and then it controls when it goes out. So you can turn each one of those big blue blocks on and off. It's kind of like the same kind of principle behind like your house wiring. If you ever rewired an electric socket or a light switch, kind of the same thing. You interrupt that flow when you turn it off, and then when you turn it on, it makes that connection and you can go. So this relay board, you can find Raspberry Pis everywhere. You can probably find these relay boards everywhere. The one that I have in there was a $8 Amazon purchase one day, so you can get them fairly cheap and do some cool things with it. If you ever decide to play with this stuff, just remember it is electric. Like, I mean, you can fry some, I mean, we haven't set it on fire or anything, but it's probably, right, it's a yet. Like, it's probably going to happen. So with this all, well, this is a bad picture. It's all like kind of sort of wired up, but not connected to the Pi. So after this, if anybody wants to come look at it, everything's behind the green light. I can open that up if it doesn't fall off the chair. So I mounted everything on a plexiglass board, and the idea was I would mount that in there, and the power strip is purely to power the Pi. So I had a bunch of random Apple power adapters laying around. It's USB that goes in. And then I just cut an electric wire and spliced everything together. That's pretty much the internals. And then each light, there's nothing special about it. It's 2 wires, white and black, going to each light. That's it. So same principle that you have with your house wiring, same thing with electric sockets. And then that's kind of a not mounted wires everywhere kind of view, but it'll show you the connections and all that. So everything is wired up at this point. And we just don't have any software behind it. So I didn't try and jam it in PHP. I decided to use Node. And being unfamiliar with Node, I resorted to the internet of what kind of different stuff was out there and how things could work. So Socket.io was something that I had read about previously, and I had actually even played with it before, but nothing like this. And then the other thing that you need to think about is controlling those pins. You need to have a way to do that. So typically I do stuff like that in Python. But there's a package called GPIO, which lets you control the pins. So you have a different set of pins that you can assign, or I guess use. And you can say, I want data coming from them, or I want data going to it. In this case, we're saying, you know, we want to send stuff to that other board. So we only have 3 lights. We only need to control 3 of those different relays. So we have a total of 5 wires between the boards. So the GPIO lets us do that. We can say we want to interact with pin 2, 3, and 4. And then we assign that to a variable, and then we can either turn it on or turn it off. If you decide to go the route of using the board that I did, for some reason, 1 is actually off and 0 is on. So something to keep in mind. Like when you're sitting there trying to play with things and you're like, why the hell doesn't this work? That's why it's opposite for some reason. I don't know if other relay boards are like that. It didn't make sense logically being a programmer. So one of the downfalls of using that is you have to run as root. So being a Linux guy, typically you don't want to run your web server as root. Bad shit tends to happen when you do that. In this case, we are doing that. So they had some workarounds with how we can access those pins without running as root. I couldn't get them to work, and I tried for a good solid 10 minutes before I just said, we'll just run it as root. So I'm sure there's a solution, and maybe I'll play with that a little bit later. But for now, this is going to do it. So I have a web interface for this too, and it uses Socket.io to communicate. So I'm going to give you guys some info in a second, and you can connect to the traffic light and control it. But I would also ask that there's 50, 60 people in here, probably not the greatest idea of all of you connecting to it at once. So it is a Raspberry Pi. So like if you look around and you see your neighbors doing it, hold off a bit. So just because if you break it, I mean, if it gets overloaded, it's not going to work, but I'm not sure what else is going to happen either. So we have a simple web interface, and the web interface just handles clicks. None of the actual circuit control or light updates in the visual that we have are really handled by that web interface. Everything is passed to Node, and then Node passes the state back to the browser through the socket. So if somebody turns the light green, that gets pushed to my client, and then it shows green on my end. That's the last slide. So let's show you how it works real quick. One problem I had was I tried to get this to auto start when the first boots up, and it does, but for some reason it fails. I haven't had a chance to figure that out. So if this doesn't work, then we just got to restart it real quick. So we have like a simple traffic light looking thing. Yeah, see, it already broke. Give me 1 second. So simple Linux box. The thing that I tried to use was quick to wire, which was the thing that gets around the root problem. It does look like it hasn't been touched in 2 years. So if like kernels change and all that, then that would probably be a reason why. So when this fires up, everything lights up. So the reason why all those light up is not like a cool initialization thing that happens. It's because when you first try and open that pin, it tries to set it to 0, but then the board thinks 0 is on, so that turns everything on at once. So, I mean, whatever. So that's fine. So then you can just go through and click and turn these on and off. So I also added in like a single light mode, which if you're in the front row, you can see it. It's way down at the bottom. And somebody connected to it. That wasn't me. Yes. So if you connect to the traffic light Wi-Fi network, you should be able to go to like trafficlight.local. But if that doesn't work, then you can just go to the IP addresses, which is 192.168.50.1. So as modes are changing and all that, these things will unclick and light up appropriately. It's a little slow, and I blame that on the Wi-Fi. It works pretty quick when you're connected through a straight up network cable, but I think that's just the Raspberry Pi being a Raspberry Pi. It's not the quickest thing out there, but it works. So everybody should be able to click and control the light. And if we look at some of the stuff that comes through here, you can see that we just pass back the different lights. We just say, you know, the go, which is green, is true, and then slow yellow is false, and then that just updates the UI, and then the single light mode, that just toggles whatever mode it is. And then if we look at, so I use WebStorm because I use use PHP Storm and it's familiar, but
So is single window mode not part of the state?
yes. I'm not sure what you mean when you say state.
It did look like single window was passed through the socket.
Should be.
It just wasn't in the object you were looking at there.
Oh yeah. So that's different. Like if you toggle it, there's two that we pass back and forth: the actual individual lights and then the mode, which is yeah. So they're two different ones. So it's pretty straightforward. We just look for new connections. Once we get a new connection, we pass out our current state of everything, and then or the current state of the lights, and we pass out the mode that we're in, and then we just we listen for light and we listen for mode, and then each one does different things. So if you switch the mode and the lights are on, it's going to turn them all off if you move to single light mode, and then that just calls this chunk up here, and it looks at what got toggled, and then passes back the light state to the connected clients. And then I have a bunch of debug stuff. This was like me trying to figure out why the hell the 1 and 0 thing wasn't working. And then the front end code is, really, it's really simple. So when we do a change, we just do socket.emit, and then we put the light that we're working with, and we invert whatever state that it's currently in. And then when we see a mode change, we update our UI. And then when we see a light change, we just update the lights red, yellow, green, and then reset them if they're not set to true. And that's pretty much it. So that's controlling the hardware. And there's been no fires, which I think is pretty cool. I don't trust to leave it on at night yet, but just because it is new, and then playing with electric and then stuff like that is always kind of questionable. So that's pretty much it. It's really simple to start using. If anybody wants a copy of the code, you can. I don't have it on GitHub or anything, but feel free to ask, and I will gladly share. But you can see the light just changed to green and then updated on mine. And if I change it to red, slow. Yeah, it's definitely the Wi-Fi. And that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot to it. So I thought controlling the pins would be a little bit more difficult. I mean, I guess if I get around that running as root issue, that might change. But if you break the rules and run everything as root, everything tends to work pretty well. So yeah, does anybody, should I wait for Jason to ask if there's questions, or no, you're good? Okay. Carl?
You didn't talk about the wonderful technology that came with it.
Oh, the original controller that was in the light?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was just a simple, it came with a board in there that you couldn't control anything. It was just a normal timer. So it would just rotate every 15 seconds. Nothing special. If you look at the board and you compare it to like a Raspberry Pi or something that I'm working with now, it looks like it's from the 60s. So I don't think I'm not sure if that was actually like a production thing they used. I don't think it was. I think it was just a guy that put one in there after the fact and shipped it out that way. I mean, I don't think they actually have like plugs either. So I think they're actually wired up a little bit bigger. Anything else? Nothing?
So are you using this to actually tap into your live status or anything at work?
We thought about doing, I think build status will be the next one. Like if we get failures on something, we got to figure that out because like the red is like when you're in a small room and it's complete, like it's really annoying. And if you look like directly at it, you start seeing spots and stuff. It's like looking into the sun. So yeah, we probably will do something like that. If builds fail, like, light it up red. Yeah.
So I did that in a previous job, the same deal. Be wary of how visible the stoplight is if you're wiring it to your builds, because you'd be amazed how much people delight in coming by and giving you shit when your builds. Everybody in the company can see it.
That's fair. That's fair. Maybe we'll just set up different lamps at each other's desk and we can just have, it'll be like the shame light.
So there was an extreme feedback thing a while back I saw like years ago where they wired up a Nerf dart gun to shoot the guy who broke the build.
That might be version 2.
Sat around the room, and so they just dropped in the middle.
That's neat. I'll have to check that out. Anybody else? All right, cool.
So you can ask people questions there too.